Well, windows have long been and held a powerful place in art, not simply as architectural features, but as ideas. During the Renaissance, the theorist Leon Battista Alberti described painting itself as an open window. Through that window, we are invited into another world, one carefully shaped by the artist. This is a beautiful, a contemporary artist, Lois Dodd, and we're going to look at another one of her pieces in a few minutes. But a window does more than show us something. It frames what we see, it determines what is included and what is left out. It guides light into a space, and with that light, it creates meaning. Artists return to windows again and again because they solve both visual and emotional questions. Visually, they create structure, as you can see in this particular painting, depth and direction. They guide our eyes through a composition. Emotionally, they suggest longing or reflection, separation, possibility. A figure at a window may be waiting or remembering or imagining. A room with a window may feel open or it may feel enclosed. Windows exist as a threshold between inside and outside, between what is known and what lies beyond. As we move through the works today, I invite you to slow down your looking. Notice where your eyes go first. Notice where it lingers. Notice what feels clear and what feels uncertain. Because, my dear friends, art is not fixed. The artist begins the work, but you, as the viewer, complete it. Each of us brings our own memory, our experiences, and our emotions to what we see. And that means each of us may discover just something entirely different. And that is the beauty of art. This is James Cowie's look at uh, a looking glass. Oops, let me go back. He creates a painting that is as much about thinking as it is about seeing. Um, and he really, truly opens up our eyes and our visions to what is just absolutely shattering. Take a look at that particular picture. What do you see? What does it make you feel? Um, this is the barn window with a white square. Lois Dodd presents us with a scene that feels simple, almost spare, yet every element is intentional. Lois is an American painter, and we saw the very first picture that I showed you was Lois, who has spent decades working directly from observation. She often paints the same subjects just repeatedly: windows, barn trees, capturing subtle changes in light and atmosphere. Her work is grounded in discipline and attentiveness. She has said that she paints what there is to be seen, suggesting a quiet humility in her approach. The design is built on strong contrast and simplicity. The white square immediately draws the eye, anchoring the composition. And then you have that darker frame around it, it strengthens that focus. It works much like a photographer cropping an image to remove distraction and highlight what matters. There is very little detail, yet nothing feels missing. So let's kind of talk in your mind. That's what we're going to do today. You're going to sit back and enjoy these paintings, and then I'm going to ask you some reflective questions. And I want you to think about them as we go through this. And then at the end, we're going to discuss the painting that really, the window that really drew you in. So I want each one of you, as we go through these slides, to be thinking about the painting that really meant something to you at that particular moment. So let's take a look at Lois's, for example. What is the simplest shape you noticed? How does it guide your eye? What Dot is trying to do is she's trying to remind us that meaning does not require complexity. It doesn't have to be a really fussy thing. It doesn't require complexity. So, how does it control the image here? In Lent, I think when we stop and think about Lent, and really those of us that are doing that practice right now, this kind of reminds me of what is the small things? What is the small thing that needs your attention? Think about that. What is a small thing in your life that needs your attention? Because I believe that this painting by Dodd kind of brings that to light. Does this painting say anything else to you? Look at the windows. There are four that are shaded. There are four that are completely black. Looks like you have a wooden frame around it. It is a barn window, but yet you're looking through the darkness of the barn into the light. Look at this window. This window is by David Redfern, and it's called Look Through Any Window. David Redfern invites us to look through multiple layers of space. We're just not looking, if you really take a look at this, we're looking at multiple layers of space here. Yet something kind of feels emotionally distant, doesn't it? Even though we're looking through that, there's still a distance here. Redfern is a British painter who explores perception, and he also explores modern relationships. His work often reveals subtle tensions within everyday life, using his structure to shape meaning. What do you see in this painting? Look at it carefully. The design of this painting relies on repetition of frames. Lots of framing going on here if you look at it. Each window, look at the division in each one of these window panes. It's a division of space. It's like looking through a series of doorways where each opening creates really, look at it, each of these spaces create more distance rather than connection. And even though we can see everything, the figures remain separate. Notice how many layers exist between you and the people inside this window. And notice how lines are dividing the composition. I believe what Redfern is trying to say here a little bit is that visibility does not guarantee understanding. So you simply look at something and see it visibly, but there's a lot going on in this particular painting. So observe this. How many frames are there? How many frames do you see? Now reflect. Do they connect? Do these frames connect this painting, or does it divide it? And as a Lenten reflection, where are you distant from others? Because sometimes we can see that seeing something isn't really connecting with it. Ah, this is Regent's Park. And the painter, Adrian Berg, transforms a familiar view into something expansive and layered with time. Berg was a British painter, and he was known repeatedly for painting the view from his window overlooking Regent's Park. Rather than capturing a single moment, he layered in his window multiple observations, different seasons, different light, into one composition. In later years, Berg rarely left his studio. The window became his primary connection to the outside world. And this design is in a structured grid. Each section holds a slightly different version of the same scene. It's like looking at a collection of photographs taken at different times and placed together in one frame. This repetition that he's got is orderly, it creates order. But look at the variation. Even though there's repetition going in and there's order being created in this painting, the variation keeps it going. So, first of all, let's observe. How many panes are there, or how many frames are there in this window? Okay. Do they connect? Do these frames connect, or do they divide? And on the Lenten reflection, where are you distant from others? So, as we see again, seeing and seeing in this instance are are pulling us together, moments together. What season are you in right now? What season of your life are you in? This is crystalline, and the picture is at the mirror. Let's look at this. Okay. Kirsten creates a real quiet interior where reflection, if you think about it and look at the reflection that's going on in this of the light, the reflection is not only in the mirror, becomes a part of seeing. Kirsten was a German romantic painter, and he focused on introspection and stillness. His works often depict figures engaged in quiet, solitary moments. He was closely associated with one of my favorite all-time painters. We're going to see some of his work, Caspar David Friedrich. And they shared an interest in the inner life and the emotional depth. Well, notice this, the design is carefully balanced. The mirror reflects, the window illuminates, and the figure stands between these two forms of seeing. It's like being in a space where you can look outward while also becoming aware of yourself. The light is soft and it's controlled, and it just reinforces the stillness of the scene. What do you see? Look at this painting carefully. What do you see directly? And what do you see through reflection? Kirsting is suggesting that understanding requires both outward observation and inward reflection. So let's observe. What is reflected in this? Is it the light? Is it the reflection in the mirror? Is the reflection going on over here? Is it in the softness? What is she doing? What is she reflecting on? Step inside this painting. How does the mirror change meaning? And in your Lenten reflection, where do you need reflection? Where do you need to look and see reflection in your life? Where do you need to look within? Ah, love this one. This is Diefenbach's Window in Sunlight. This painting moves us, in this window, it moves us really from darkness into light. He focuses on atmospheric interiors. He often uses light as the central subject rather than a narrative detail. His works capture moments that feel suspended in time, like those impressionistic painters that we have been living with, that you've been working and sharing art with me for the last 8 years. The Impressionists, that's what they wanted. They wanted to capture that moment in time. The design, if you look, begins in shadow. The dark interior frames the window, pushing our attention forward. We're not looking backward, we're looking forward. The panes divide the view into subtle variations of green and sky. It's like stepping into a dim room into daylight, where your eyes start to adjust gradually. Now look carefully at this painting. Where do you first notice the light? How does it move across the space? How does the light move? Because it does in this painting. How does it move across the light? What he shows us in this particular painting is that light becomes meaningful through contrast. So you've got the dark and you've got the light. And those of you that have been with us, we've looked at a lot of painters that use that so well. And one that the giant among them all was Caravaggio, who could take those bold, dark backgrounds and then illuminate with just the light on a face. As I've often said, if you ever get to Dublin, and especially in this holy season, if you're not in Dublin, you can look it up on the internet and look at the magnificent painting that Caravaggio did, The Taking of Christ. I never will forget that moment when I stood in front of that painting, and it was just magnificent, the way that he used that dark, dark background and then illuminated all of the faces in that scene when Christ was taken. So we talked about light and darkness, and we talked about how darkness shapes it. Ask yourself this Lenten question. Where in this week particularly, and where in this season is light entering your life? Sometimes, as in this picture, light just doesn't hit you across the face. Sometimes it comes gently. Okay, I know. Some of you are saying, why did she include this one? Because art needs to make you stop Good art makes you stop, makes you look, makes you observe. And remember, I think in some when we were at the Comer, I told you or offered you the suggestion that when you look at a piece of work, in order to understand it better, if you can look at it and say, "Oh, I don't like that. I don't understand it," then start asking your questions. Why? And usually the answers to the why you don't like something reveals a lot about the piece of art that you're looking at. So let's look. This is called My Blue Sky. And Louise Bourgeois transforms a window into a deep personal expression. So, what's going on in this one? Bourgeois was a French American artist known for exploring memory and emotion and the body through her work. She often used found objects, including elements even from her own home. This particular window frame was salvaged from her basement, making it both material and also memory. And I want to share just an aside. And if any of you live in Clay County, you need to go to the Clay County Courthouse and take a look upstairs. There is a fantastic, beautiful display, just like this, of window frames, but the window frames have pieces of wonderful photography about Clay County and Green Cove Springs matted behind them. And it's a walk through time, but it's also another reflection. So if you get an opportunity, go take a look at that exhibit because it really is good. This window frame, as we said, that now we've got design. Let's look at the design here. The design contrasts the solid structure of the frame with a soft, dissolving form within it. It feels like something is held firmly in place, yet slowly transforming. What? Where does the structure remain strong? Where's the strongest part? And where does it begin to soften? So there is such a thing as thinking of memory and holding memories in our hearts and our souls of things that are perhaps not good. And there's a time when we can just hopefully release them. This is kind of what it just reminds me of. You've got her color of red, you've got the movement between the you've got the space between it. And it also tells me that perhaps what we hold and what we hold so dear with the blue sky and everything, we can release as well. So in Lent, the question would be, and maybe Bourgeois is asking us to answer this question as we look at this painting, what can you release? What can you let go of and get rid of? I think because she's kind of calling us to the point that transformation happens. This is Jan van Eyck, and this is the Madonna of Chancellor Roland. And I absolutely love this painting. The color, the depth, and it is just rich in bringing us, to me, I'm sitting there with them. He has made me a really physical part of this painting. He invites us into a world of extraordinary detail. He was a master of early Netherlandish painting. He developed techniques using oil paint that allowed for luminous surfaces and absolutely intricate realism. So look at what the window opens to. The window opens onto a vast landscape filled with tiny, precise details, bridges, buildings, figures, if you look out into this area. It's like looking through a lens that keeps everything in focus. No matter how far away, it's still keeping things in focus. What details, look very carefully, and I know it's hard to see, but what details can you make out in the distance of this painting? Perhaps you see figures, perhaps a bridge, perhaps the mountains. There's a village here, and it looks like they're standing on some kind of outlaying from the window itself. How does this window, look at the mastery of this, how does this window extend the space? It just, you have in the forefront, of course, you have uh, the two people, but this wonderful example of how you can look at art can expand the space, expand your vision. He says, or he suggests, that the world beyond the immediate, the world beyond right now, the world that we're in, holds depth and also richness. And looking closely, it reveals more than we expect. So let's observe. I'm giving you 4 things to do. We're observing, we're reflecting, we're talking about Lent, and then we're kind of having a little closing. So let's observe. What is far away? What is far away in this? This is the Madonna. The Madonna, here you see she's being crowned. She's holding the baby. And this is the cardinal who is praying. This is praying to her. She's dressed richly in the red robes that is characteristic of royalty. Notice the brocade. Notice the pattern. This is a really rich. Notice the opening, the Bible. Notice the robes. I mean, this is such a tactile painting. How can you look beyond yourself? How can we, during this time, I think we're asked to look beyond ourselves? How can we look deeper into our hearts and our souls? And I think that's perhaps what the cardinal was doing. He was looking deeper into his soul, reflecting on the Christ child, reflecting on salvation. And now we have Gauguin. And this is the vase of flowers in the window. Gauguin, oh, wow. This particular, and I'm sure I'm saying it wrong, that's the East Texas pronunciation, balances the intimacy, and I'm talking about inside, the intimate side of a room. He balances that with the outside world. He was a post-impressionist painter. He used color and simplified forms to express emotion rather than the realistic painting like you just saw. That was a very realistic painting that we just observed. Well, this is not. He's looking for that moment. He's trying to capture that moment in a very simplified form. The foreground is rich in its objects. Look at what's in the foreground. Flowers and fabric, a book, while the window leads outside to a quieter space as well. It mirrors the way our attention moves from what is close and what is distant. Now close your eyes. Now open them. Where does your eye begin? Where does it travel? This is another, I guess you would say, lesson in art that I'm kind of giving you today is observation, because that's what it's all about. You can take any painting and you can stand there and you can observe things. And the first place it starts with is literally your eyes. Close them, open them, and see where your eye goes first. He is, I believe, suggesting that near and far exist together in our awareness. And he's also, I think, suggesting that what surrounds us, what is in our environment, what we place there, what we allow to come in there also shapes how we feel. So we observed, number one, where our eyes began. We reflected on the idea of near versus far, very simple things to maybe understanding and getting involved in this painting. Now let's talk about the lint aspect of this painting. How can you and we, I'm including myself in all of this, how can we look beyond ourselves? How can we sit in our environments, which is comfortable, reflect on what is near and dear to us, but yet look beyond ourselves? I think, in essence, this particular painting calls us during this, perhaps this season, to just look deeper inside and think about the things that are really important and maybe the things that we need to reflect on, to act upon, as Kate has mentioned in her devotionals um, during this Lenten season. Because we can cause awareness around there. It shifts. Our environment shifts. What we're in, it shifts. And we need to take a little bit closer look. And this painting kind of calls us to do that. Another old friend of ours, this is Matisse. And this is probably one of the most famous window pictures of all time, believe it or not. Okay, look at this window and look at the color in this window. Oh my gosh, he was just a master of putting colors together. First again, where do your eyes go? Where's the first thing you look at? He transformed this window not only into a celebration of color, but he also a celebration of emotion. He was a leader of the Fauvism. There was Impressionism, Fauvism, all of these art movements. And in that Fauvism, they like to use bold, non-naturalistic colors to express a feeling rather than to depict reality. Once again, this is not a realistic painting. But they, as we go again, you saw use color. And let's go back and just see how he used this. He's impressionistic. Okay. Things, it's not real. Okay. Not a realistic painting. We're moving into trying to pull you into an emotion with color and line and contrast. And here the Favists say, color can move you. It can make you do things. I once heard a went to a symposium about color, using color with children as a teacher, and I was very interested because the lecturer had talked about what kind of colors they chose for inmates in prison, and they certainly didn't choose red for the walls, and they choose this soothing colors and greens, like greens and blues. This is a beautiful example of having form dissolving too, because things begin to dissolve into these vibrant colors inside and outside. They merge into really one single experience. It's like what we do every Sunday. It's like looking through stained glass, where color itself becomes the subject. Now, where does the structure give way to color? Look at it carefully. Where does it get way to the color? You see those oranges. And he's using colors to draw your eyes to specific things. How does your eye respond to this? And here's what old Matisse is suggesting. He is suggesting that emotion shapes how we see. Emotion shapes how we see. And he's also suggesting that sometimes we understand through feeling rather than form. And this is really key to understanding and getting involved with modern art, things that are not realistic. This is one of the key things that if you can think about is they want to create an emotion in you, and this is a fine example of it. Um, so look at this through your eyes in Lent too. As you go through Lent, what are you feeling? What did you feel? Those of you that attended um, church yesterday, and we had that wonderful litany of all of our fellow members standing up and doing the last moments of Christ and what he went through. When you go through Stations of the Cross and you look at those beautiful statues that we have, and you go through each station, that was created uh, to make you feel just like Matisse's too, because if we can walk in Christ's footsteps with those beautiful sculptures in our cathedral, if we can look at those stained glass windows and have the color and those pieces reflect emotions, we can feel along with him. And that's kind of what it's all about. Edward Hopper, Nighthawks, 1942, middle of World War II, New York City. And it's at night, and you look into a diner and you see these four figures. You're walking by. That's what he wants you to do. He's pulling you into this scene. And maybe you're just standing on the corner, and waiting for a taxi cab, or maybe it's after you've worked late at night. And you just look across and you see these four figures. Edward Hopper was an American painter, and he was known for capturing just this quiet, often lonely moments of modern life. He, working in the mid 20th century, he focused on urban and rural scenes, using simplified forms and strong light to convey psychological depth. He often worked from sketches and memory, carefully constructing each composition. He was known to be reserved and introspective, and that emotional distance is often reflected in his work. The composition is built on, and let's talk about form here, because this composition is built on geometry. The angled diner, the long counter, the glass, the window stretching across the scene. The window acts like a stage, exposing the figures while separating them from us. The harsh, artificial light contrasts sharply with the dark, empty street outside. It is like looking into a brightly lit aquarium at night. Everything visible, yet unreachable. Where in this picture, look at it, do you see the strongest contrast between light and dark? How are these figures positioned in relation to one another? Hopper suggests that visibility doesn't guarantee connection. People can share space and they can still remain isolated. Even in the brightest places, we can experience profound solitude. Where do you feel alone? Where do you don't feel a connection? Vermeer. Oh, Vermeer was a Dutch Baroque painter, and he was celebrated for these quiet little domestic interiors. And there's a lot going on. In all of these paintings, there is so much more going on that we could discuss hours and hours about. I'm just kind of pulling you into the observation mode and hopefully the emotional and the reflection mode that you can pull those elements at least out of these paintings and get a feeling so that when we go to cover and we have our listen and learn lunches and we look at these paintings, that art starts to become really real to you in an emotional and a visual way. Um, he painted slowly. He produced relatively few works. He used careful observation and possibly optical devices to achieve his luminous effects. And that is another story and it's really interesting. His compositions, they're balanced, they're intimate, and they are extremely precise. Little is known about his life, but his paintings, all of his paintings, suggest a deep sensitivity to stillness in everyday moments. And he was a master. This is not a really good um, likeness I can't get because it's grainy looking. But if you get a chance to go look at Vermeer's work, he was a master, just like Caravaggio, of using light to its advantage. The window, though partially unseen outside, is a source of light. It illuminates the woman, the table, the texture, the fabric, the fruit. The composition is vertical. The composition is is vertical and horizontal lines. You can see those. I mean, he was a master of design and element as well. It's like, sitting in a quiet room where the light gently reveals what matters most. So look at this. Look at this composition. Where does the light fall most strongly? What details are revealed? What details? And there's a lot of details that are revealed. And look at this right here. What remains in the shadow? Vermeer shows that quiet, private moments can hold deep emotional significance. He shows us that stillness is important. He reveals that to me as well. So, where is quiet meaningful to you? And are you having those quiet moments of reflection during this Lenten season? Believe it or not, I know some of you who know the artist Salvador Dali will be surprised to know that this is his, he's known for the melting clock and all other kinds of surrealism. And but this is his early early painting of his, and it's called "Girl at the Window." So look at this. What what do you observe? What is she looking at? Look at this window. Look at the color here. Look at the design. The and notice really how he uses all of the different shades of blue to draw your eye in. What does this space suggest? Dolly had strong technical skills. This figure is Dolly's sister, Anna Maria, which gives this painting probably a personal and intimate quality. And it's calm. It's beautifully balanced. The figure stands in the center. She's framed by the open window. The sea stretches outward, creating depth and openness. It feels like standing at the edge of a quiet moment where the interior just gives way into this wonderful vast space. So just let's be observers, good observers now. Where is the horizon line? Okay, where would you find the horizon line? How does it affect your sense of space? And how does this figure relate? How does this figure relate? This painting suggests a moment of contemplation standing between the known and perhaps the unknown. And in Lent, as we reflect upon the scriptures and the pageantry of the Palm Sunday and all of the other things that we've done, and even this as we go into the Holy Week, enter into it, looking outward often reflects us to look inward. Chagall. He was a Russian French artist. His work often draws from personal history, folklore, emotional memory. He rejected really strict real. He's got some realism in here, but he rejected the strictness of it, like the Van Eyck we saw it. He often painted scenes from memory, merging past and present. This window frames a world that is both real and imagined. This is Paris through the windows. The colors are bold, they're unexpected. The figures float. He always has floating. You'll know Chagall because usually he has floating people in his paintings. Look at okay, observation. I'm asking you some observation questions now. So everybody put those observation caps on again. What elements or which of the elements here feel grounded in reality and which feel imagined? I certainly would imagine that you would look at the Eiffel Tower and maybe the buildings. But look at this right here. It looks like people floating here. You've got a two-faced man, maybe not so grounded. Somebody looks like he's flying through the air. The frame of the window is definitely grounded. Chagall suggests that memory and imagination shape how we see the world. Imagination, he felt, opened windows beyond which is physically present. So he thought, there's windows that are there, but that they really the windows opened up the imagination to the world beyond. And here's our favorite. A lot of us love this so much. This is Andrew Wyeth's beautiful windows, the wind blowing through the windows, wind from the sea. He worked primarily in watercolor, if you can believe it. And those of you that saw it and you got up close when we went to the Cummer and saw his work, he focused on rural landscapes and interiors, but he painted a lot of windows. If you go and look at a collection of his work, you will just be amazed at how many windows and he painted. He had a deep connection to place, particularly the homes and landscapes he painted. This design element, I just want to focus on it for a minute. The composition centers on a window with a curtain blowing inward. The movement of the fabric suggests an unseen force. It's like feeling a breeze in a steel roof, something invisible, made visible through motion. So, where do you see movement in this painting? And where do you see things that remain still? Why should suggest that presence, he suggests a presence without showing a figure. He invites you into this scene, but there's a presence there as well. Something unseen is clearly felt in this painting, something that we can't touch. Perhaps the wind, but there's something else here. And as we go through the Lenten season, we realize that where what's unseen plays a big deal in Lent, and emotions do as well. This is the interior with the window, and this is not grainy. This is what Hemmerschach did. He is a Danish painter. He's known for these quiet interiors. He used a limited palette. He lived a very quiet life, and his paintings, all of his paintings, generally most of them, reflect this quiet sense of calm and restraint. This composition is just uncluttered, light enters softly through the window, illuminates a otherwise stark, empty place. It's like standing in a quiet room where sound itself is absent. Ask yourself this question. What is missing from the room? And how does the light, look at the light, look at the light. How does it define this space? And sometimes the absence of objects, just sitting alone in a stark room or someplace where there just isn't anything, sometimes that creates a space for reflection as well. Silence, silence is not empty. And I think as meditation, as those of us are creating meditative moments for ourselves during Lent, I think, you know, we understand that. We know that silence is not empty, that it's full of a presence. Oh, how I love this guy. This is Henri Marquis and Rene Marquis. He was a Belgian surrealist. He was known for challenging perception and reality, and he certainly does in this painting, if you'll look at it. Um, he painted ordinary objects in unexpected ways, creating visual puzzles that question what we see. He was deeply interested in philosophy and the nature of perception. This is a painting that is sitting in front of a window, perfectly aligned. This painting is perfectly aligned, as you can see, if you look closely. Here's the painting right here. You see the knob, the easel here. Here's the painting. It's difficult to distinguish where the painting ends and reality begins. It feels like a visual illusion, forcing us to question what is real. Where does the painted image align with the landscape? Where does it align? Right, if you'll look down here, here's the corner of it. Where does it align with the landscape? Can you tell where one ends and one begins? Marquette suggests that our perception of reality is constructed, and not only is it constructed, but it is uncertain. And this is a thought that you can hold to go forward in your Lenten devotions too, because what we see is shaped by how we understand it. Think about that. And that was a big part of this artist's philosophy. What we see is shaped by how we understand it. The Open Window by Bernard is another beautiful. He was a French painter and he was noted for the use of color, intimate domestic scenes. He painted from memory rather than direct observations. He allowed color and emotion to guide his compositions. He often painted scenes from his home, creating deeply personal works. Color dissolves the boundary between interior and exterior. If you notice, the color just dissolves. Here's your window frame, but the color is dissolving all of that interior and exterior. It's like watching all of these colors flow together. I love this, rather than distinct forms. So look at this, observers. Where does the interior and the exterior begin? And he is using color to unify this space. What color is he using to unify this space? What he's suggesting is that boundaries are fluid and often emotional rather than physical. Connection happens gradually, often without clear edges. And I think that's important to realize in our relationships with other people during this Lenten season. You know, we are so fortunate in this church to have members who are just so caring and loving. And every Sunday, I look out in the congregation and I see what people bring to the altar. And if we allow ourselves, sometimes it's very difficult if you come into a large congregation and try to figure your way out if you're new. And also, if you're an old member, see new faces. I think what he's saying is that this congregation, to me, all of the members, that even though the connections happen gradually, they're often without edges at all, and the colors blend together to form just a really vibrant, living group of individuals that are striving to work, know, and love God. This is probably the most famous, believe it or not, picture of a window. This is by Caspar David Frederick. If he is noted for, he's a German romantic painter known for exploring emotion and the sublime. And if you pull up windows, artists and windows, famous artists and windows, this painting is going to come up over and over and over if you Google it. He's often depicted figures facing away from the viewer. He's the monk at the ocean, the man and I've used his paintings a lot, inviting us to share their perspective. He believed that art should express inner feeling rather than outward experience. She stands to us with her back, framed by the window. Look at the vertical lines, all of the vertical lines, okay? And vertical lines emphasize stillness. The outside world is visible, but her face remains hidden. It is like standing beside someone lost in thought that we all have done before, sharing their view, but not their mind. And I ask and pose this question, observers: what don't we see in this painting? Look at her posture. How does her posture communicate emotion? The artist is suggesting in this painting, and notice I say I'm using the word suggest a lot because artists paint and they have reasons for painting, emotional, whatever, or sometimes not. But when they create something, they really then, I think, turn it over to us. They suggest things, but we as the viewer can enter into this room with her. We can pause behind her. We can look at her surroundings. We can, like I said before, sometimes when people are lost in mind, you don't know what they're thinking. And he says, though, even with the way the posture is of this person, that sometimes emotion can be felt, deeply felt, without being outwardly expressed. And that's another key thing to art, I think. What artists are trying to do, they're trying to express emotion and wanting you to join in with that emotion without, writing it down and say, okay, she's sad. I want you to feel sad. Okay, she's happy. I want you to feel sad. Oh, she's looking out the window now. I think this is a moment that he wants you to step into and maybe reflect too. So looking outward, and that's another thing I think that we're called to in Lent to do and to think about, can reveal what we feel within. Ah, this is Paul Nash. He's a British modernist painter, and he's known for blending. I've been talking about Impressionism, Fawcett, and being in Dali's melting clocks and all the surrealistic people. But here is a painter that kind of blends a lot of that. He is blending in realism with abstraction. That's another term that we use in art and for another quote unquote movement. He often depicted landscapes that feel slightly altered, like this one kind of does, kind of dreamlike. And he, once again, remember we talked about the combination is what of Imagine of Bernard. It's a combination of combining observation with imagination. That's what looking at art is all about too. It's combining your kind of imagination and your observation together, as well as the artist. Nash was deeply, deeply affected by the war, World War II, and his work often reflects a sense of unease beneath familiar scenes. This window frames a landscape that just kind of feels subtly, not really, but subtly distorted. Shapes are recognizable, but slightly off, like looking at a familiar place, but somehow it feels unfamiliar. So, what feels slightly altered and are unusual here? Look at this, observers. What feels slightly altered? How does this framework of this window shape your interpretation of this? Nash is suggesting that reality is not always stable. It's shaped by perception. Seeing clearly sometimes mean questioning what we see and what we think we see. And I believe that is another thing that we're called to look upon during this Lenten season. Okay, as we come to the end of our time together, we return once more to the idea of the window. Each of these artists has shown us that a window is not something we simply look through. It is something that shapes how we see, how we understand light, space, and even ourselves. But perhaps the most important part of this experience is not what the artist intended. It's what you saw, what you felt, what stayed with you, because art is not fixed. The artist begins the work, but the viewer completes it. Each of us, each of us brings our own experiences, our memories, and our emotions. Um, and that means each of us finds something slightly different, something personal, something meaningful. And that is the beauty of art. That's why I am so passionate about it, because it's like a window. It remains open and it invites us to look in again and again, and perhaps to see something new each time. Now, this is what I would like. Those of you that can stay, I know we've run 9 minutes over, but I'd like to run till 9 to 15 minutes. And I'm going to kind of flip back through these pictures just really quickly, okay? And what I would like for you to do is each one of you, if you would be so kind, is to share just your thoughts about windows and perhaps use as a guide one of these windows that you've looked at, perhaps. The other thing that I would share with you is all of these windows that I've used today are on the Art at Noon website, and there's some more information about them if you're interested to kind of take a look at them. But as I flip through these, kind of which one of these really resonated with you? Which one of these, perhaps as a Lenten reflection, would you like to go back perhaps and take another look at and just kind of think about? Which one of these taught you something perhaps about observing that you hadn't looked at? Which one of these perhaps caused you to think that art perhaps can, and it certainly can cause emotions? Which one of these would you like to hang in your home? Which one of these puzzled you and you didn't like, but caused you to ask questions? Which one of these made you want to get to know the person better, perhaps, or crawl inside and sit in the room? Which one of these made you realize that observing, preserving, and looking and seeing that perhaps you needed to look a little more carefully at what you were looking at? Okay, Catherine, take it.
Okay. Who would like to start? D. I see you there. And you're not muted.
I know. I've been waiting.
And you were
Would
very
you go? Would
quiet.
you? I did. Yes. Would you go to the artist that was the easel? I didn't get his name or her name and the name of the painting.
Okay.
Um, yeah, that one. Who is that? That's
And it's Marquette, Renee Marquette, Gitte. And the name of the painting, I'll have to look at it. I think it's looking through it. Human. It's human. Hang on a minute. Because I didn't write it down. Human reflection, I think, D.
okay.
But it's the human condition. That is the human condition.
Okay, great. Because I found I have a similar thing that I'm so proud of this that Salvador Dali has that if you look at something, you can find a face in it. I can see a tile wall and I will see a face. And so I was fascinated with this one that until you explained it to me, I could see three or four different possibilities. And then the one back with the lady with the window with the like the red shape and the look like eggs on there. um, when you first put that up, I thought I knew what I saw until I looked at it and I saw the crook of her arm. And I said, oh my gosh, that is totally different, you know? So I think you've made such a good point, Sandy, with saying we don't always know what we're seeing.
We really don't.
And if we do like Thomas Keating said, keep an open mind and an open heart, think life will open to us. So.
Thank you, Dee. That's beautiful. Anybody else?
I liked the Regent Park one and the topic of disconnection. Yeah, that really and thinking about the different seasons, what season are you in? I just that I really it's very thought provoking.
Well, that's what it's all about. And that leads me to this one, if I can pull it up. Um, that we are all in. Can you see this, Catherine?
I'm seeing your search
Yeah,
on for
that's what
Facebook. Yeah.
I'm looking for. Okay. This is the art at noon. Can you see this?
Yeah, it's a little to the right, but yeah, we can see
Okay.
it.
Let me make it a little bit bigger. This is our art at noon page, okay?
Yeah, it's
And
good.
if you will look, there's many more that you can go and take a look at on this page with reflections. That is what I have discovered, and this is this morning's one, and we'll just kind of hit it real fast. Okay. All right, let's just take a look at this one right here. This is, and if you'll see, I will give you the meditation. This fella is Garrett Rittner, and he's British. And let's see if I can make this larger. Okay, I can't. That just doesn't look. It doesn't. And do this on your. If you go and do these paintings, pull them up and look at them full screen if you can. This is what he's noted for, and I think, and I put it to you over here and I'll read it to you because I've forgotten it already. It's been so early. He experienced he experienced 9/11 personally, and he makes his images blurred. Now, if you're just looking at that, then you do need, I think, a little bit of background, just a little bit. But just really, if you didn't have any background, you know, it's like I said, it just comes. Sometimes you can see a shape, you know, see a shape, but it's blurred. And, that take time to observe that it's a blurred surface, but as I pointed out, that Christ before his accusers, they certainly had a blurred version, and he answered them quietly. He didn't at all. So anyway, anybody else got any ideas about it? Something that you want to share with us, because this is a sharing time moment. All right. We thank you so much for joining us for Windows of Grace, and hope that you will come back and share more and look and enjoy this time together. This has been a great time for me. I sure have enjoyed it.
Thank you, Sandy. That was wonderful. Paul's waving.
Yeah. Thanks so much. It's one of my favorite media. It's one of my favorite techniques in art. It's just great. I love it.
This was very powerful, Sandy. Thank you so much.
Yes.
Yes, thank you, Sandy.
You're welcome, honey.
Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Bye.
Bye-bye.